Hi, I'm Linda, and this is episode 13 in my experiences dating as a senior. It was hard walking away from MB. He was very handsome. Tall, nice build, full head of hair that was long, a very sexy goatee, great smile, and a wonderful deep voice. He was also going on 73 years of age. We had a lot in common, like science fiction, rock music, and a love of antiques. He collected bayonets and swords among anything else that took his fancy. Overall, he was a very nice man and very personable, as he liked to stop and talk to anyone. We were both night people, and he liked my cat. He let me bring my cat with me when I stayed with him for a few days. At first, we were inseparable. Though he lived 90 miles from me, we stayed at my place for a few days, and then his place, then swapped again for a few times. Right or wrong, I have a tendency to jump into a relationship. It worked with my late husband of 16 years. MB seemed proud that I am an American. Later on, he used it as an excuse for anything he didn't care for about me. We had a great couple of weeks in the beginning. Considering he was not fully functional due to his hernia, MB was a very sensitive and good lover. One thing I liked was that he would not let me out of bed in the morning until we had cuddled for a long time. He was also kinky and had a fetish for bondage. I did let him tie me up and blindfold me once, and I did it to him twice. It's about trust as much as anything else. I found the experiences interesting, but I don't care to go there again. I did file this in the back of my mind as a red flag. Eventually, I found out it was the only way he could get off. Apparently, he had 0 in the libido department. He said he planned to get his hernia repaired, as it caused a blood flow problem. But he was all talk on this and wouldn't actually lift a finger to set the process of a repair in motion. I really wanted a man who I could truly be intimate with, but I soon had my doubts about this ever happening with him. I loved cuddling with him, yet I kept getting this voice in my head just to enjoy it while I could. MB was a vegetarian. He said it was because meat made him ill, but dairy products were okay. I was fine with cutting down the amount of meat I ate and consumed more vegetables. He made a big deal about the amount of sugar and butter I used, and constantly pointed out the amount of chemicals I was consuming, even in the flavored water I was drinking. So I made an effort to cut down. However, he was a hypocrite in the volume of biscuits and ice cream bars he ate. Discovering he was judgmental and very controlling happened quickly. At first, he said he was not in my life to change me, but immediately several suggestions came up how I could do things to improve myself to be the best version of myself. He claimed to be an old hippie, which was what I was looking for, as I wanted someone who would accept me for myself and not feel the need to change me. Turned out he wanted to change all kinds of things about me. I was close enough to what he wanted. He thought he could mold me into being perfect for him. First thing he pushed me to do was get into yoga. He would go on and on about how good a shape he was in being able to lift weights. He had good upper body strength. I don't think he was aware he was a bit hunched at his neck and shoulders, possibly with osteoporosis. On the flip side, he had been in a bicycle accident 25 years earlier that busted his hips badly, so he had pain that caused poor sleep and difficulty in other areas. He would go on and on about how strong he was and how no one should mess with him. He was unaware just how vulnerable he really was because of his old injury. He wanted me to get contacts because he wore them. I have had glasses since I was a child. Due to the fact I often use my rotary tool and other power tools, I rely on them to protect my eyes and don't wear goggles, and I do not care to be putting something in my eyes every day. He wanted me to get boots and wear skinny jeans. I hate skinny jeans and prefer loose-fitting clothing that allows for flexibility. I can dress up nice if it is worth my while, but it is not comfortable. I like to wear hats outside because I hate the sun in my eyes and rain on my glasses. No matter what I said, he couldn't see the point in wearing hats, so he didn't care for me to wear them. He said he didn't care about my hats, but he continually hassled me about them. Then there was the problem with his daughter. MB walked her dog a few days of the week. It was a large boxer that was out of control. He constantly complained about how the dog needed training, but he would not lift a finger to do any, and nor would his daughter because she worked a full-time job. I had watched several shows about training dogs and wanted to see if the methods would work on the dog. He was very resistant to that and stopped me going on walks with him. Seemed he would rather moan about it than do anything about it. In fact, his way to solve every issue he didn't like was to pretend to mow down people and animals with a machine gun. This was another red flag I filed away. There was also a conflict when I was with him at her house and they were talking about the dog walking schedule, and I asked if he could do it earlier the following day so he could go see a castle. Apparently my request upset both of them, as that was just between them. He didn't tell me then that it upset him at the time. Instead of talking to me about it, he just became more distant. He was trying to put me in my place without telling me where that was. He finally told me where my place was when we broke up. I never would have accepted it. When you become someone's partner for life, then you should become their priority, because your partner will take care of you for life, whereas children move around and have their own priorities. He was very busy with his buddies doing car stuff and more. I found other things to do when he was gone, but I resented that I was left alone so often. Though he was retired, he had less and less time for me, and would not include me in any of his visits with his friends when I was staying with him. The chaos of his flat was barely tolerable. Though I have a lot of stuff, I am very organized. His flat was piles of random papers and things that looked like someone had put it all in a blender and then deposited everywhere. You could barely move around the place and had to be very careful where you stepped. All of the piles were a mishmash, continually moved around from one temporary place to another. Everywhere there were boxes of various tools, piles of clothing and other cloths, jars that should have been recycled, cards, pens, bills and other correspondence, collectibles and more. The kitchen was almost impossible to function in. He made an effort to clean some of it up while I was there. I tried to help him by cleaning the kitchen. It all grated on me, but I said little except to offer my help. He did not appreciate it. There was also the issue of his boiler being broken. There was no hot water except for his shower. It required boiling water in a kettle to do dishes. He was not at all sensitive to cold, but I was. His flat was always cold, which really did bother me. He was renting his flat from his daughter and seemed reluctant to get her to fix the boiler, which had gone down over a year ago. Supposedly he was fixing up the flat for her after a previous tenant had messed it up. There were unfinished projects everywhere that added to the chaos. I seriously encouraged him to at least find out why the boiler didn't work, but it fell on deaf ears. He liked to compost his food waste, but had no proper way to do it. He ended up with a bag of rotting food that smelled bad and drew insects until he could get around to taking it to a friend's house who could dispose of it in a composting area, which didn't happen anywhere near often enough. I took some of it to the trash bin. Fortunately, he said nothing about me doing that, but I suspect he resented it. He really thought he was smarter than the average bear. He would go on and on about how bad things were in the UK and around the world, but would not do anything about it. It was just his job to make people aware. He claimed he was in with a group of people who were concerned about all that stuff, but none of them would do anything about any of it either. Lots of talk and no action got irritating quickly. I had already spent years trying to right some wrongs. I had enough of that and just wanted to enjoy the time I have left. So I told people not to try to suck me into their cause. It never stopped them trying. MB really was about passive abuse for the purpose of controlling me. He enjoyed grabbing my hands and then flicking my nose while saying, "You know you can't win against me." Then there was his frowny face along with the rolling eyes. He did it all as a joke, well, sort of a joke. He often made me feel as if I was doing something wrong just by liking food with more sugar than he approved of. And for some reason, though I never found out why, he insisted on doing the dishes all the time, though he wasn't as good at it as I was. He left bits of food or grease on them, which disgusted me. When I stayed at his place, he would give me a hard time about me having done the dishes while he was gone or asleep, instead of thanking me. For my birthday, I drove him and another couple in town to an antique shop where I loaned him the money for a beautiful dress sword. We then went to a local garden center and helped his friends get a huge pot for planting a tree in. It was fun to spend a little time with his friends at their house. In the evening, he took me out to a nice dinner. It started going downhill right after my birthday. He went back to his place, but I had to stay home to get work done on my car for the coming MOT. I had to take my car back to the garage that had done exhaust work that failed, and it took 10 days for them to sort it out. I was not impressed, so I had planned to get the rest of the work done where MB lived, because he had someone he recommended. He called me every night, but never once said he missed me or loved me, though I told him I missed him. I knew I would be stuck home, so I tried to get him to come back and see me. He just said he had too much to do. Once I got my car sorted where I lived, I went to his place as planned to get the rest done. He never said anything about looking forward to seeing me. Upon arrival, there were no open arms or kisses from him, which gave me a sense of him not wanting me there. I still had to stick to the plan to get my car fixed and do the MOT, as I was quickly running out of time and risked not being able to drive it. From the beginning, I was waiting for some switch to flip in his brain that would make it all turn to shit. I don't know why. That niggling feeling was always there, so I just made the best of it. I could tell he was pulling away as he lost interest in sex and affection. There were a few issues that needed to be settled before I could say anything. He owed me money for the sword I put on my credit card, and he was not in any hurry to pay me back. I did my best not to intrude on his life and activities. He took me to a few sites to see in his area, and I enjoyed his company. Unfortunately, it took longer to get my car finished at his recommended garage than planned. Though he feigned being okay with it, he was giving my cat more attention than me. I knew I had to leave as soon as possible. It was difficult for me not to confront him about the growing tension. But I had to wait for my car to be done and get my money back first. I dropped hints and gave him every opportunity to give me affection. Regarding me, I don't think he was bothered either way whether he was with me or not, so I was ready to move on from him. As soon as my car was done, I managed to get my money from him and loaded up to go home. Once I was ready to leave, I asked him what had happened that caused him to withdraw affection and sex. He blamed it on my asking his daughter to let him walk the dog early, but I knew it was started before that. He then said he felt we were spending too much time together. He thought I would be feeling that way as well, and asked if there were things that annoyed me about him, such that I should give him more space. I said it was just the withdrawal of affection and sex that bothered me. I really wanted a man who would be my best friend and constant companion, so I did not feel the need to be away from him. He wanted time apart, and I knew that would mean I would have no idea when he would want to see me again. I don't wait for guys, and I won't let one string me along to suit his convenience. My answer was to say, then let's call it done, and I will get all of my stuff out of here, and I will send you your stuff back when I get home. He was fine with that, and we parted amicably. I shipped his stuff back the next day. Upon reflection, it would not have worked out. I wanted someone who I could work with. He was not technically savvy, which was discouraging for me, but nothing he was bothered about, because he had friends who he could solve his technical problems. I hoped I could find someone to do DIY stuff with. He talked a lot about potential projects, but lacked focus to get much done. I disliked staying at his flat because of having to be so careful where I stepped and the lack of hot water, much less no heat in the winter. Though he was a good lover when he wanted to be, his fetish would get old quickly, as well as the lack of ever being truly intimate. I did not believe he would get his hernia repaired, and that may not fix his problem anyway. I couldn't suggest he take a pill for it, because he was against taking pills or chemicals, and I would not want to put someone at risk taking a pill just to be intimate. That would have to be his idea. The distance was also a problem. I was not interested in a long-distance relationship, because you never know when you will be seeing the guy again. He had seemed okay with it, saying we were just 90 minutes away from each other. We both soon noticed the cost of traveling back and forth. I had no interest in moving, and neither did he. I had absolutely no intention of ever moving back to Scotland, because I hated the politics there, especially with the Sturgeon's talk of pushing for independence, among other things. His physical package was so nice. He had a slightly crooked, sexy smile like Sean Connery, though he kind of looked like Billy Connolly, and he had a wonderful voice like John Bishop. His mental package was too judgmental and controlling. I don't know what was going through his head before I confronted him. I don't think he expected me to break up with him. He could have strung me along indefinitely. Thank the universe that I have enough self-esteem and sensitivity to know when it is time to walk away. I must admit I still wanted to contact him about some of the things we have in common, like antiques. 3 weeks after we split up, I sent him an email about something on an auction site just to see if he would respond, hoping it might be possible to be friends. There was no reply. It did make me feel better knowing I gave it my best shot. Then a couple of weeks later he had a birthday, so I sent him a text wishing him the best. Again, there was no reply. I really needed to be sure there was nothing left as I expected. He was drifting away right after he got a specific treat from me, something he really wanted in the fetish department. I think once he got what he wanted, the thrill was gone. Some guys are just in it for the initial thrill of the chase. They may talk in terms of a long relationship, but once the honeymoon is over and real life sets in, they lose interest. There were many reasons it couldn't have worked long term, and I knew it going in, so I took my own advice and enjoyed it while I could. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe.